Hello, my name is Aida Regel-Poulsen. I am the Secretary of European Federation Hard of Hearing, IFO. I'm pleased to share this presentation with you on the hard of hearing person's experience during COVID-19. My background for this presentation is that I do voluntary work for the Danish Association Hard of Hearing. Through there, I am elected the Secretary of IFO. Professionally, I have worked as a hearing consultant for school children in Denmark, nationwide. These school children have hearing loss and are in local settings. On top of that, hearing loss runs in my family. I use speech to text at meetings and conferences at national and international levels, and I cooperate the use of the speech to text with the use of my hearing aids and assistive listening systems. LTA means Live Text Access, and IFO is a proud partner of the LTA project, which is an Erasmus Plus project. We set up an education for speech-to-text interpreters and subtitlers throughout Europe. Now, how has accessibility been with COVID-19 for hard of hearing people? As a FO secretary, I usually travel around a lot in Europe, and as the secretary, I also communicate with many people, in particular hard of hearing people and the FO members. We have difficulties in hearing and understanding, but we know our skills in asking for clarification and repetition and all these things. We learn from each other around the world about living with hearing loss. Now, the typically needed conditions for a hard of hearing person when we have these events around Europe, we have a room someplace in Europe, and in that room we see to it that it has been looped. And the loop will then transmit the sound that is spoken into the tailor coil of the hearing aid or the cochlear implant that the person is wearing. But often this is not enough, although it is a great help. So on top of this, we also facilitate that we have a speech-to-text interpreter in the room that will write, type what is being said. So this all comes up on the screen. We typically also need short distance to one another in order to facilitate good eye contact and a short distance to the sound source. And of course, this is in conflict with the COVID-19 restrictions. We also need good acoustics, good light, and not too many together at a time. To be not too many together at a time is in line with the COVID-19 restrictions. Many of us also rely on lip reading, of course, but you should know that we still fight for this. Then the world closed down, and of course, hard of hearing population worldwide are facing huge problems in communication because we cannot meet physically, we cannot keep the very close distance to one another when we communicate, but also because now we have to wear face masks, and this prevents us from using lip reading, in fact. So it is a problem as we go more digital also. And in my country, in the beginning, when we had the first lockdown, there was a press conference, and there would typically be 5 people in the panel. Among these, we had the Prime Minister, of course, and we had very confusing sign language interpretation at these first conferences because as the Prime Minister would speak, the sign language interpreter would stand right next to her. And when somebody else spoke, that interpreter would have to move to that next person speaking. And this is, of course, very much against the COVID-19 restrictions, as you know. We would also have live captioning or subtitling during these broadcastings, but these do not follow the spoken word. So I would have like 2 different tracks in my brain that I would have to cooperate for this. All these press conferences were on health issues and restrictions. Now, when we have these press conferences, the topic is still the same, and the Sign language interpreting is now in fact in a good quality because the interpreter is in a box with a fixed camera, but the quality of speech to text is not improved, so I use my loop when at home. When we have press conferences on business-related topics in COVID-19 times, these meetings have no sign language interpretation, but they will be subtitled. But it just makes one wonder if they do not think that people with hearing loss and deafness have interest in economics, and do they not think that we run our own business and that we go to work? Hard of hearing people need the same info. Our lives matter, and we need to stay in contact, and we are lost without assistive listening systems and speech to text. And related to the example I gave before, choices are made on our behalf. For these virtual events, we need some basic guidelines that do not have bright light behind you, place your camera adequate for facial expressions, and to facilitate lip reading. And you should use a clipped microphone or a microphone on the table to shorten the distance. And also hard of hearing people need to facilitate short distance to the microphone in order to make it easier to hear and understand. And this is an education for all. In fact, national associations can facilitate courses for their members. It seems we now also need guidelines for remote speech to text. We users of speech to text have different needs. Different options must be available on each platform. For instance, you could have subtitling like on the picture here, or somebody would like a small window coming up where more text appears at the same time. Automatic speech recognition from different companies are often not correct, and live speech to text is no doubt still needed. That means also that speech to text interpreters need to be qualified, and with more need for speech to text, we need a higher education of speech to text interpreters. And this is why the LCA project is so important, that we get a higher education for the speech to text interpreters. There is a huge need for speech to text. Captioning, speech to text, subtitling, or whatever we call it, is the primary means of access for some individuals, and is all too frequently unrecognized, unacknowledged, and it is not funded. And FO addresses this important issue, and we hope to bring about significant changes for our communities. As for human rights and GDPR, it is not enough that the speech to text or subtitling is there. We really do need some guidelines for how to practically set up virtual meetings and seminars. And it must be remembered that hard of hearing need not just to attend, but we need to be able to participate. We also need guidelines for speed of typing and the correctness, in order that the text must follow the spoken word as close as possible. And then what is acceptable as to mistypos? And do you delete the whole line when you have done some mistypos, or do you carry on? This needs to be looked into. As for general data protection regulations, it has happened to me that the speech-to-text interpreter wanted to be the one to send out the invitation for the virtual event, and in fact also be the host of the meeting, which is taking away from me a responsibility that I can in fact manage. So this also needs to be looked into, also in a way that not everybody wants to share out their email addresses for anybody, so this should not be a job of the speech-to-text interpreter. All the things I've listed up here, I've listed up because this is what has been happening to me. At the same time, also COVID-19, with the need of more virtual events, has indeed pushed forward the need to look into use of speech-to-text for different events. So my conclusions for this presentation is that accessibility is in fact a way of living, and this is for both the person in need, which is me, as the society providing the accessibility. It is making a living for both the provider and the user. This is how we should look into sustainable goals and work with accessibility. Thank you for inviting me to give this presentation, and thank you for your attention.
LTA Live Text Access, Universitat Autónoma de Barcelona, SDI, Internationale Hochschule, Scuola Superiore per Mediatori Linguistici, ZDF Digital, European Federation of Hard of Hearing People FHO, Velotype, Subti Access, European Certification and Qualification Association ECQA. Co-funded by the Erasmus Plus program of the European Union. Erasmus Plus project 2018-1-DE01-KA203-004218. The information and views set on this presentation are those of the authors and do not necessarily reflect the official opinion of the European Union. Neither the European Union institutions and bodies, nor any person acting on their behalf, may be held responsible for the use which may be made of the information contained here.